From great privateer to infamous pirate, he came to be known as the Wizard of the Seas.
Wizard?
And would pay for lawless pursuits at sea with his life. Treason, plunder and murder. Meet the notorious and legendary Captain Kidd. Welcome to Crimes from History. William Kidd was born in Greenock, Scotland in 1654. The golden age of piracy was in its infancy, but when it came to an end almost 80 years later, its legacy and influence would shape the earliest ideas of freedom and democracy in the New World, as well as giving us a fun character to dress up as on Halloween. In 1665, England took a settlement called New Netherland from the Dutch and renamed it New York, New York. Kidd decided to emigrate there as a young man. Bright lights, big city, except it only had a population of around 5,000 at the time, so it would have been more like dull lights, small village. He schmoozed his way into the highest echelons of New York society and befriended the most prominent citizens, including governors and merchants. Kidd had dreams of a life on the high seas, which in a seafaring town such as New York shouldn't be too difficult to achieve. Through his connections, he managed to wangle a job on a French pirate ship as an apprentice. A couple of things. Firstly, if he were in fact hobnobbing with the city's elite, why could he only get work on some dodgy pirate ship? And secondly, I'd love to know how to get on that apprenticeship scheme. Do a City and Guilds level 2 in swashbuckling, a BTEC in booty hunting. Not that. That. The captain of the ship and head pirate was Jean Fontaine. He's got a parrot! Ooh la la! Oh, crikey, c'est terrifiant. Oh, he's got a monkey in this one. Are they sure he wasn't a zookeeper? In 1689, the pirates travelled to the Caribbean. Yeah, that's a bit unoriginal. During which time, England and France declared war for like the millionth time. And as one of only a handful of Englishmen aboard the French ship, Kidd and his fellow countrymen banded together. One of those Englishmen was Robert Culliford, and the pair became firm friends. When Captain Fontaine and his crew left the ship to fight English soldiers on the island of St Kitts, the English guys aboard weren't really into it, so instead of joining in, Kidd and Culliford led their English crewmates in a rebellion by nicking the boat, sailing off and abandoning Fontaine and his men. No word on what happened to the parrot or the monkey, but Kidd sailed the vessel to a nearby island called Nevis and renamed the ship the Blessed William, not after himself, William Kidd, but after the reigning King of England, Ireland and Scotland, William III. Kidd and Culliford became pally with Christopher Codrington, the governor of Nevis, who commissioned the crew of the Blessed William to defend the island from the French and appointed Kidd captain. Codrington didn't pay them for their service, however. Instead, he suggested they take their payment from the French, a wink wink, nudge nudge, i.e. get all piratey on them and take all their shit. This was a practice known as privateering and was perfectly legal at the time, as long as it was A, during wartime, and B, carried out under the orders of a sovereign or official authority. Kidd's crew enthusiastically obliged and attacked the French island of Marie Galante. They decimated its only town, looting around £2,000, which is a lot. Look at all those wool stones. After this, the Blessed William obtained more legitimate privateering commissions from officials in New York, Massachusetts and New England, capturing enemy ships. Kidd was on the straight and narrow, kind of, but trouble was brewing. Culliford and the rest of the crew wanted to be free and lawless. They didn't like that their captain was making them work for the man.
Don't be a...
And most importantly, they would earn more money by becoming pirates again. Kidd refused and was swiftly visited by the Karma Chameleon when Culliford and the gang nicked the boat while he was ashore in Antigua. I wonder how they got him to go ashore by himself. Whoa, look on that island, there's tons of treasure lying all over the place. Are you sure? Nah, looks like rocks to me. There's loads of treasure over there. Treasure! Arr. Well, if you can all see it, it must be there. Okay, there's nothing here. No, it's further away, over there. Guys, I can't see anything. That's because you need to go further. Still nothing. A little bit further. Right, hoist the sails, go, go, go! Oh, you bastards! Can't believe I fell for that. See you later, loser. Kidd plodded back to New York, but it wasn't all doom and gloom for him. He'd made quite a name for himself back there, and in 1691 he'd caught the eye of one of the wealthiest women in the city, Sarah Bradley Cox Ort. Although in her early 20s, she'd already been widowed twice, which is a bit of a red flag, but Kidd, now aged 37, liked a taste of danger. So just 2 days after the death of her second husband, they were married and he moved into Sarah's swanky mansion on Pearl Street. Although he would be absent for a lot of their relationship, by all counts they were deeply in love and would go on to have 2 children over the course of their 10-year marriage. William Kidd was sitting pretty. He had it all. Career as a sea captain, a healthy, loving family, and plenty, and I mean plenty, of money. But he had itchy feet. He missed the ocean and the adventure it provided. By 1695, he was buddies with Richard Coote, the first Earl of Bellamont and Governor of New York, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, no less. Coote approached the trusty and beloved Captain Kidd to assist with a problem, a pirate problem. They were causing too much bloody trouble, and not just off the east coast of America, but, well, everywhere. Pirates were capturing and looting English ships left, right and centre, or port, starboard and centre. Between the pirates and the French, who England was still at war with, their situation was becoming dire. They needed someone to stop them, someone to halt the onslaught. They needed a hero. They needed Captain Kidd. And these orders came all the way from the top of the heap, the king of the hill, the A1 King William III himself. Go on then. Off he went to London to meet a veritable bevy of noble folk, all ready and willing to invest in his expedition. Some of the most powerful men in England provided funding. You're talking the Earl of Orford, the Baron of Romney, the Duke of Shrewsbury, Lord Chancellor Sir Edmund Harrison, Robert Livingston the Younger, Sir John Somers, no less, the real big knobs of the time. Kidd was presented with a letter of marque, kind of like a licence to kill, signed personally by King Willie III, which allowed Kidd to attack anyone who associated themselves with pirates, along with any enemy French ships. Plundered loot would be distributed between Kidd and the investors, and a cool 10% would be for the crown. But Kidd needed a ship, and my gosh, a ship he would have. He bought Adventure Galley, known simply as Adventure, for £8,000, an eye-watering £968,571 in today's money. That's a lot of wool stones in August 1696. The vessel combined sails and oars, an unusual combination for warships at the time, which allowed her to make 14 knots or 16 miles per hour under full sail, and 3 knots, that's 3.5 miles per hour under oar. Whoa, hold on to your wigs, fellas. Adventure could hold 150 men and had an impressive 32 guns, perfect for blasting pesky pirates, or the French, out of the water. However, they got off to a bumpy start. Sailing down the Thames as they left London, Kidd was feeling rebellious and failed to salute a navy yacht. The yacht fired a shot to remind them of the etiquette, but instead of saluting, the crew of Adventure responded by showing them their bums. Not known to scrimp on punishment, the naval officer boarded Adventure and took most of its crew into naval service, regardless of Kidd's protests that he had a letter of marque and as privateers should be exempt from such reprisals. The officer was having none of it, and the now short-handed Kidd was forced to sail to New York City, for where better to pick up a new crew than a city covered in seamen. However, once in the Big Apple, the only men Kidd could recruit were of, let's say, questionable repute.
I hate Peter Pan.
Pirates. They were pirates, basically. But hey, who better to capture a bunch of pirates than a bunch of pirates? They were an unruly gang, and Kidd had issues getting them under control. They wouldn't do what they were told, they got drunk all the time, they didn't listen to Kidd's orders, and constantly threatened mutiny. They were an all-round pain in the arse, but that's what you get when you hire a load of pirates. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Pirates are, unreliable employees. I've never said that. And things would only get worse for Kidd. Adventure sprung leaks and was bogged down with technical problems. A third of his crew died of cholera, and he failed to find the pirates he'd expected to encounter. To the frustration of his crew, Kidd refused to attack a number of ships when given the chance because they were out of bounds of the terms of his commission. When they finally attacked a trading ship, escaped prisoners told how Kidd's crew ransacked it and tortured several of its crew members, while Kidd and the other captain talked privately in his cabin. When Kidd found out what happened, he was outraged and forced his men to return most of the stolen property. This only led to more division between the captain and his ruthless crew. Kidd was frustrated, his crew were frustrated, most of whom abandoned ship as soon as they got the chance. Off the east coast of Africa in October 1697, gunner William Moore was sharpening a chisel on the deck of Adventure when he spotted a Dutch ship which he urged Kidd to attack. Kidd refused as King William III had been born in Holland, and the last thing he wanted to do was to anger the monarch. Moore began muttering about his captain's incompetence. When he heard this, Kidd was enraged and called Moore a lousy dog. "If I am a lousy dog, you have made me so. You have brought me to ruin and many more," replied the gunner. Furious, Kidd swung an iron bucket at Moore, knocking him to the deck. Moore would die from his injuries the next day. When he heard the news, Kidd remarked that he had good friends in England that would get him out of trouble. But those good friends were about to turn on him and declare Captain Kidd a pirate after two questionable events. The first occurred when Adventure came upon a Royal Navy vessel who were in need of men to assist in the war effort against the French. They requested 30 of Kidd's crew members, which he promised them. However, under cover of darkness, Kidd sailed away, having never handed the men over. The naval officer reported the incident as an act of piracy, which, I don't know, feels like that's a bit of a stretch. The next incident of supposed piracy came about in January 1698. Pirates would often carry flags of different countries, which they would fly to dupe captains into thinking they were allies.
She shows no flag, but she has the look of an Arab merchant. Perhaps she's waiting for you to show your colors. If so, we'll trick her. Hoist the flag of France. I see.
By the time they got close, it would be too late for the target to escape, and the pirates would fire upon and board them, making off with their loot. Sometimes, if their ship was fast enough, pirates would outright fly a blood-red flag to show exactly who they were and that their target was in for trouble, which is pretty scary, especially if you knew your ship was too slow to get away. On this occasion, Kidd raised French colours and managed to take his greatest prize, a 400-ton Indian ship hired by Armenian merchants called the Quiddack Merchant. It was loaded with satin, gold, silver and silk. Finally, after 2 long years at sea, Kidd had managed to pluck quite the haul. However, the captain of Quiddack Merchant was an Englishman named Wright, who had passes promising him protection of the French crown. Realising the captain was an Englishman threw Kidd into an ethical grey area. But his crew argued that taking the ship would be perfectly legal. After all, they were commissioned to take French ships, which this was as it had French passes. They refused to let the ship go, and fearing mutiny after years of fruitless endeavours, Kidd decided they could keep their prize. But that's for your birthday and Christmas. When news of this reached England, officials classed Kidd as a pirate. Naval officers were ordered to pursue and seize Captain Kidd and his accomplices for the notorious piracies they had committed. Again, pretty harsh. I'd have said the ship was fair game, but maybe I'm a pirate. Oh, you bastards! Kidd kept the passes as proof that the seizure of Quiddack Merchant fell in line with his commission, just in case it was disputed, and he renamed the vessel Adventure Prize. Nice touch. 3 months later, on the 1st of April 1698, Kidd reached Madagascar, and who should he run into but Robert Culliford, his former friend and the scoundrel who had stolen Kidd's ship, abandoning him in Antigua years before.
Welly, 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 well.
So did they have a big piratey fight? Yet no. They boarded Culliford's frigate, where Kidd drank to the captain's health and exchanged gifts of anchors and guns. This raises eyebrows when it's argued that Kidd may not have been a pirate, as he made no attempt to capture Culliford and his crew, exactly what he was charged with doing. But in his defence, it would have been difficult to capture them, especially considering his own band of pirates were becoming less cooperative as time went by. Some reports suggest Kidd did plan to attack and capture the men, and his friendliness was all an act until he was in a position to do so, but there's no evidence of this. After a delightful evening, Kidd came crashing down to earth when he realised most of his men were abandoning him for Culliford. Only 13 remained loyal to Kidd, and he prepared to return to New York, ordering Adventure to be burnt because she was a leaky, worm-eaten piece of crap. By this time, he'd received word that he was a wanted man, and that Adventure Prize, the ship formerly known as Quiddack Merchant, was a marked vessel. So when he reached the Caribbean, he sold her to pirate William Burke and headed to New York on a small sloop. Around this time, the 1698 Act of Grace was offering royal pardons to pirates. Unfortunately for Kidd, he was exempt due to the funding he'd received from prominent statesmen for his expedition. One of those high-profile investors was his old friend Richard Coote. Remember him? The first Earl of Bellamont and governor of New York, Massachusetts and New Hampshire, no less? Well, Coote was afraid he himself may be labelled a pirate by association, so lured Kidd to Boston with false promises of clemency, only to have him locked away in Stone Prison, and his wife, Sarah, just in case she may have known anything. She didn't, so she was released, and upon hearing her beloved Kidd was to be shipped to London for trial, she gave the captain of the ship charged with transporting the prisoner a solid gold ring to ensure that Kidd on board had all the things, including paper and pens, that he needed to make his case. Sarah and their children remained in New York City. They were never to see Kidd again. Kidd stood trial before the High Court of Admiralty in London for the charges of piracy on the high seas and the murder of gunner William Moore. The passes that Kidd had kept as proof that the seizure of the Quiddack Merchant was legitimate, as it had been sailing under French protection, had been lost, leaving Kidd to his fate. He was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to death. On the 23rd of May 1701, at Execution Dock, Wapping, London, Captain William Kidd was hanged at a public execution. But, in a little twist to his ending, on the first attempt the hangman's rope broke and Kidd survived. There was uproar from the crowd, with most protesting he should be let go, claiming the breaking of the rope was a sign from God. But Kidd was hanged again minutes later and died. His body was gibbeted, which means it was hung in a cage till it rotted away. Lovely.
You're all sick!
His remains swung over the River Thames for 3 years at Tilbury Point as a warning to would-be pirates. Today, along that stretch, you'll find a pub named in his honour. Sarah remarried a few years later and went on to have 4 more children. Her last was a boy she named William, after Kidd. Much has been made of treasure that Captain Kidd is said to have buried along his route home, hoping to come back to use as a bargaining tool. Still today, people attempt to find buried treasure in Connecticut, Long Island, Nova Scotia, New Jersey, the Caribbean, even Vietnam. But the only known loot was discovered on Gardiner's Island in New York just before his trial and used as evidence. The rest, who knows? But if you find any, don't forget my cut. And that's it. Please consider subscribing if you'd like to see more of this kind of thing. Thank you so much for listening. Sweet dreams.